Assalamualaikum warahmatullahi wabarakatuh. My name is Hjh Nurun Nasuha alias Hajah Khalila Nur binti Haji Yunus, and today I'll be presenting on my study regarding a comparative analysis of halal and food safety auditing practices in Malaysia, Indonesia, Singapore, and Brunei Darussalam. As we all know, the expansion and demand of halal products have been increasing rapidly, in which the halal market is projected to exceed around 6 trillion by 2024. Halal food consumption is very important in Islam. That encompasses of halal is also a type which is good or wholesome. Another critical component in halal quality assurance is actually food safety, to ensure that the food will not harm consumers when it is prepared or consumed as intended. So as nowadays, there's estimated around 420,000 people die from unsafe food. So although we can actually see the visible aspects of the food quality, but the contamination and the non-compliance towards the standards may not be noticeable through the sensor inspection. Therefore, a comprehensive audit processes are very important to assist in ensuring the halal integrity and food safety of the products. Therefore, this preliminary study aims to identify the commonalities and differences in auditing practices in Malaysia, Singapore, Indonesia, and Brunei, therefore assisting in proposing recommendation to development of these standardized checklists in Brunei food manufacturing companies. So we'll move on to the problem statement. So most of the previous studies, they're actually mainly focusing on halal certification, policy, branding, as well as governance. There is a very limited research on the practical auditing practices in Malaysia, Singapore, Indonesia, and Brunei. Furthermore, it was also found that there is ambiguity on the audit scope and also uncertainty regarding whether the food safety have been incorporated in the current halal auditing practices. Internal audits is often rely on subjective interpretations as well due to the lack of standardization. So this could actually lead to inconsistency in auditing practices that affect the halal quality assurance of the product in food manufacturing companies. That could actually create a potential gaps in fulfilling the principle of halalan thayyiban. Like a case in Brunei, a halal certified restaurant in Cairo actually uncovers non-halal products. So this illustrates the risk of cross-contamination as well as the non-compliance that highlight the need for a more standardized and comprehensive internal audit framework. As for the research questions is what are the commonalities and differences in both halal and food safety auditing practices between Malaysia, Singapore, Indonesia, and Brunei? As for the research objective is to identify the commonalities and differences in both halal and food safety auditing practices between Malaysia, Singapore, Indonesia, and Brunei. For this research methodology, I'll be focusing on the qualitative analysis in which a secondary sources will be used comprises of the government regulation, official guidelines, and website from the National Halal and Food Safety Certification Authorities, in which this will cover the auditing practices in the 4 countries. Furthermore, academic literature will also be used from reputable online sources such as Google Scholar. And then the data collected will be categorized according to the themes to food safety and halal auditing practices for comparison to identify what are the commonalities and differences among these 4 countries. So for the research findings, so table 1 actually shows the comparative analysis of the halal auditing practices in the 4 countries. So it can found that these 4 countries actually rely on adequacy, on-site, and surveillance audit for their halal auditing. And also the halal audit is aligned with the national halal standards. As for the differences, there is a difference in the comprehensiveness of the auditing practices in terms of the audit scope, the food safety aspect audited, audit checklist, auditor requirement, evaluation measurement, as well as the frequency. So for the food safety aspect audited, so as mentioned, as you can see from the table, Brunei, Malaysia, Indonesia actually only partially integrate the food safety aspect in their halal audit, whereas Singapore, they fully integrate the food safety in the halal audit. So why is that? So it's because in Singapore, as you can see, it's stated there it is licensed by the competent food safety or workplace safety authority. So workplace safety authority is actually they need to check the safetiness of the of the equipment that is being used. So for example, in food manufacturing company, like the blades and stuff like that. And then all foods must comply with hygiene and sanitary requirements of the relevant authorities during preparation, processing, packaging, transport, and storage. So the relevant authorities here means the Singapore Food Agency. So in which Singapore Food Agency that actually do the food safety standards that inclusive of the food safety management system, in which this food safety management system that actually covers the biological, chemical, and also the physical hazards, which is the main important point in the food safety auditing. So therefore, the Singapore actually fully integrate this food safety in their halal auditing, whereas Brunei, Malaysia, Indonesia only partially integrate this. As for the auditing checklist for Brunei, they only includes what are the contents of the checklist, like what should be included in the checklist in general. Whereas Malaysia, they outline it in a form of table that comprises of the Malaysia Halal certification procedure as well as the Halal control point. As for Indonesia and Singapore, there is no official checklist found, but it's stated that the audit needs to comply with the Indonesia standard as well as Singapore. It has to comply with the halal certification conditions that is listed. As for the auditor requirements, Brunei seems to actually explain in detail on what should be the requirements for the auditor. So in which the acts also included what are the attributes, the code of ethics, the terms and conditions for the auditors. Whereas Malaysia and Indonesia, they only explain it in general, like they have to be recognized by Halal Auditing or Halal Executive Certificate. And then Indonesia, like competence in planning, implementing, improving the HAS following the HAS 23,000. As for Singapore, there is no, it's not stated on the auditor requirements, so it is possible that this is confidential for Singapore. As for the evaluation measurement, Singapore and Brunei does not state any related to evaluation measurement, so this is possible that it is confidential as well. However, Malaysia stated that the auditing is evaluated via percentages, whereas Indonesia is via status by identifying what are the type of witnesses. As for frequency, Malaysia and Indonesia share the same frequency, which is once a year. However, Malaysia emphasizes that the auditing can be done more than once a year if the companies is operating a very high risk level sectors. Whereas Brunei conduct their surveillance audits at least 6 months, and Singapore repeat audits conducted when necessary. So as you can see here, there are differences in terms of the comprehensiveness of auditing practices, as well as the degree of food safety integrated in the halal audit. So the table 2 shows a comparative analysis of the food safety auditing practices in these 4 countries, where the commonalities is that the food safety audit, it actually aligned with the food safety standards. As for the audit process, they also share the same audit process between Brunei, Malaysia, and Indonesia. It's just that there's an additional information for Malaysia, like the stop and detain transport vehicle with food suspected non-compliance, except for those making an international voyage in which international health regulations apply. And there's also certification audit where you can get certified under Makanan Selamat Tanggung Jawab Industry, which is MISTI, following the audit like field follow-up and monitoring audits. As for the audit scope, they share similar in terms of the cleanliness, the hygiene, the premises, as well as the equipment. So for the audit checklist, Brunei, Indonesia, Singapore, they don't state the audit checklist, so it is possible that it is confidential along with Malaysia. However, Malaysia did mention that there is a checklist available for MISTI element that comprises of control of premises, food handler, training, maintenance, and sanitation, raw material, control, process, storage, and traceability. As for auditor requirements, Brunei doesn't state what are the requirements for a food safety auditor, so this is possible that it is confidential as well. However, Malaysia, Indonesia, Singapore stated different ones. Like Malaysia have to attend the training by the Food Safety and Quality Program, and then recognized by the compliance auditor, and then this is also eligible to act as a lead auditor as well. And then for the Indonesia, the food inspector must be competent in the food safety sector, which includes the food sanitation, contaminant, additives, and others. Whereas Singapore, they have a course they need to attend, which is the WSQ Food Safety course, Level 3 and Level 4. So Level 4 is the advanced ones. In terms of the evaluation measurement, Malaysia and Indonesia doesn't state how they evaluate the food safety audit, so it is possible that this is confidential. Whereas Brunei evaluate the auditing through percentages, whereas Singapore audited using the safety assurance for food establishment grade projection self-help tool. So as for the frequency, Brunei carried the food safety audit routinely. However, like it is also essential in a company if there is a foodborne disease outbreak or public complaints. Whereas Malaysia, they monitor the audit once a year. And then same goes to different frequency between Indonesia and Singapore as well. So this, you can see that the differences are the comprehensiveness in the auditing practices for the food safety in this comparative analysis of food safety. So to conclude, the halal and food safety auditing practices between these four countries actually share the same goals, which is they want to ensure the halal compliance, hygiene, as well as the food safety. It's just they have the differences in terms of the comprehensiveness of their auditing practices in each of the countries, like the audit scope, the checklist, auditor requirements, evaluation methods, the frequency, as well as the food safety integration. So from this, I can see that Brunei has actually strong halal regulations, like what is stated in PPD 24/2007, the BCG Halal 1234, Halal certificate, halal label order. But this halal regulation, it could be more effective with a very clear halal critical control point and also a comprehensive auditing checklist. Moreover, like integrating food safety elements in halal audit, like in Singapore, would also further strengthen the halal certification as it fulfills the halalan tayyiban principle, because halal is not just limited to permissible, but it's also related to tayyib, which is good and wholesome, which is related to food safety. So additionally, implementing auditor training and certification would improve the auditor consistency and the competency. So therefore, this paper actually recommends that Brunei to implement a risk-based internal auditor checklist that integrates both halal and food safety requirements. Hence, further strengthen the halal governance, improve audit consistency, and enhances national recognition of Brunei halal certification system. If you require further information, you may contact me through my email or my number as stated in the slides. So thank you for listening. Have a good day. Assalamualaikum.